Auckland. How is everyone doing today? Good, I hope. That's so great to hear. Trust me, it's absolutely killing me not to be there in person. And for those of you who don't know me yet very well, New Zealand is my absolute favorite place on earth, and there's nowhere else that I'd rather be. Unfortunately, due to the current commander-in-chief of my dear nation, our government was shut down for the longest time in history at the beginning of this year. And unfortunately, that's had impact on a lot of other government events scheduled to happen. For example, like the NASA and SpaceX Demo 1 launch that I am currently waiting to attend. Hence the space gear. I go down and cover the launches for exciting steps in our journey back to Mars and returning human spaceflight back to American soil. So unfortunately, the launch window and the activities surrounding it are scheduled for exactly when this event is taking place. So it breaks my heart and I truly wish I could be there, but there's hope that I can be down in person for the High Tech Awards like I usually am. So if you enjoy what's coming up, please don't hesitate to tell Bob and hopefully we can make it happen. And in the meantime, do feel free to follow me on social media. I believe the rocket will be going off at only 9 p.m. 8:45, 9 p.m. for you guys on a Sunday evening. So you might have the chance to catch it live, whereas for most of America, it's in the middle of the night. So I'm gonna get out of my launch gear, but I just wanted to show you my sweet patches and that this whole thing is authentic and I'm not just cutting out because I didn't feel like going for a long haul flight. I really, truly would rather be there than anywhere else. And I'm so sorry I'm not there in person, but this presentation about keeping your customer close and keeping them sold after they've already become a part of your community is about to be excellent. All right, I promise it's gonna be just as great as it would be if I was there in person. So hang tight to learn some really sweet stuff about customer retention. Today, we're gonna start off by talking a little bit about first why customer retention is so important. I know very well, as someone who lives in the Silicon Valley, just how big those stories with massive customer acquisition numbers can seem sometimes, and oh, we're growing by X users per day, and isn't this exciting, and we have so many monthly active users. Well, the reality is those users aren't worth anything if they don't make you any money. And a lot of the software companies that you hear these figures and stories about don't actually profit off those massive user numbers. So those of us who like to build zebra companies, companies that make revenue consistently and grow year after year, providing a great quality of life for their founders and for their employees, really look at average lifetime customer value. And the reality is your best new customer is an existing customer a lot of the time. So the three keys that we're going to talk about today for keeping your customers close is providing an excellent customer experience with great customer service, valuing your customers' time, and the importance of building a community. A few quick stats to wet your whistle. A 5% increase in customer retention can lead to a 75% increase in revenue. That's according to Bain. 89% of customers cite changing to a competitor after having a negative customer experience. So there's 1 point for the customer experience, folks. And last but not least, acquiring new customers is anywhere from 5 to 25 more times expensive than retaining an existing one, believe it or not, depending on your industry. We've all had a really terrible customer service experience. I mean, just take a moment to think about it. I'd be willing to bet it's easier for you to remember the last 3 times you had a terrible experience than it is for you to remember the last time you had a really exceptional experience. And that's unfortunate. In fact, only 1% of people believe that they are getting the best possible customer service they could anywhere at all times. And I'd be willing to bet they're also the 1%. But who knows? Who knows? All I'm saying is that there's a ton of room for growth and improvement across the board in many of our customer service experiences. And I see this a lot with the startups that I work with. They think that customer service is something that can come later when they have a certain volume of customers. They think that it might be too early to hire someone to help out with that, or to be there to answer the phone or to answer email. And the reality is, okay, maybe it's not time to hire someone, but someone needs to respond to those people immediately. Most people say that their sort of life expectancy for tolerance on how long they're willing to wait for customer service is only 5 minutes. So that's something to think about if you're opening up your social media channels or a customer service email or a chat. Is there someone who is going to respond to that, at least within a reasonable amount of time? Something to think about. And I can say that some of my most memorable brand experiences have been when a company is very new and it actually is senior leadership who responds to my customer service inquiry. It tells me that they're keeping a very close pulse on their brand and on the customer experience, and they're really owning it. And while it might not be scalable in the beginning, the reality is you're going to have to do a lot of things in the beginning that don't exactly seem scalable. But the reality is there are smart people with lots of capital who can help you scale that when the time comes. Just to be clear, as I make the case for a positive brand experience and customer service, I'm not talking about anything wild and crazy and saying you need to do some over-the-top brand activation or throw some big party with expensive swag. All I'm really saying is that you need to be transparent and that you need to be available. Your customers will spell love, T-I-M-E, and that's you not wasting their time and also valuing their time and giving them the information they need as quickly as possible. Let's dig in a little deeper into just exactly why this customer experience is statistically so important. Now, I'm sure that you're aware that word-of-mouth marketing is still the best marketing. Hearing about a product from a family member, friend, or someone that we trust still beats any clever online ad or viral video that any of us have ever put out. It's just the reality. We'll talk a little bit more about that in the community building phase. But I just wanted to note that after someone has a positive brand experience with a company, they are 77% more likely to recommend that company to a friend or family member. And that's a really incredible stat, because think about what a little focus on positive experience could do in terms of the ripple effect of that positive message then being evangelized by those customers that you've treated well. So I think that's fantastic. Also, something to note that great experience isn't just about spending more to satisfy existing customers. Customers who are having a positive brand experience are actually willing to spend more as well. It turns out that that companies can charge a 16% price premium if they offer a better experience than their competitors. Additionally, satisfied customers are more likely to upgrade a service or to subscribe to a premium service and are less likely to cancel. So remember what I said earlier, potentially your best next customer is actually your existing customer on some sort of upsell or new product offering that you happen to have recently revealed. I mentioned that it's really important to be available and to have the time to engage with your customers. 31% of people rate that being able to contact a company through any channel is the top driver of feeling emotionally connected to a brand. Now, that's really interesting because I know it can be hard to choose which channels on which to dedicate your time and energy, and I'm not saying that you need to be on all of them. In fact, I don't recommend that you're on all of them, especially in the beginning, because that's exhausting. But you should do a little bit of research to understand where your customer is when they're not talking to you and make yourself available on those platforms. And just by providing this great customer experience, you're actually building an emotional bond with your customer that's going to lead to loyalty, which is going to lead to higher lifetime value, which at the end of the day is what we all want from our loyal customer base. Like I mentioned, to kick this off, 89% of customers begin using a competitor when they have a bad experience. So even if you don't believe me on all of these positive metrics on the money that you could be making by enhancing your experience, you should trust me that if you're giving your customers a subpar experience, journey, product, whatever that may be for you in your vertical, that they are very likely to go ahead and find somebody else as soon as the opportunity presents itself, if it hasn't already. Now, what are you supposed to do with this information? Well, first of all, you need to take a good hard look at your customer journey right now. Have you ever whiteboarded exactly what it's like for a new user or gone through your sign-up flow? Has everyone in your company done that and given you feedback? If not, it's definitely time. You can start by asking your friends and family to check it out, but the real people to ask are those existing customers, if you have any. I promise you'd be surprised how many people are excited to engage with you when you ask them questions. I know it can be a bit embarrassing to ask for help and admit that maybe you don't have it all figured out, but the reality is when you let people in on the product journey, they feel like they're a part of the product development cycle and like they are in your core community. That has incredible value on a lot of different levels, and we'll talk about in a little bit. Once you've taken a look at your customer journey, it's time to look at your spend. Perhaps if you've set aside a large chunk of capital for advertising this year, it might be time to reallocate that to the customer experience and to community building. It turns out that 65% of US customers find a positive experience with a brand to be more influential than any advertisement. Think about that. Advertising is very expensive, and relative to that, a positive customer experience or dedicated folks to enhancing that can cost very little in comparison. Existing customers can also be your best source of grassroots marketing and organic evangelism. Why not take advantage of that? Last but not least, in the big era of data privacy and dilemmas around what we can and can't know about our customer, as well as being transparent about what we do know about them, it's interesting to note that 63% of customers say they would share more personal information with a company that offers a great experience. And the more you know about your customer, the easier it is to target other customers who look like and feel like them, so your cost per acquisition can be lower, and your messaging to your customer can be so much stronger when you have more data. So acquiring data, I think, is going to become harder and harder and more valuable as we move forward and global regulations roll out. So it's important to note that this customer experience process that hopefully you're going to go through after this talk can not only lead to increased ROI, a lower churn rate, meaning less customers lost to competitors, but it can also allow you to bake in a premium price for your product that currently exists and hopefully continue to learn more about your customers no matter what happens in the future. I'm not just sharing all of this with you because the statistics sound nice. I'm sharing it with you because I genuinely believe it as a community manager and as a consumer. I'll give you a real quick example. So you know this whole launch that I'm headed to and the airplane I'm actually getting off of? Well, originally I had this flight booked for January 16th, which not only wouldn't have conflicted with this, but would have been a far cheaper flight. I called Alaska Airlines when this situation started to unfold and informed them that while I didn't need to take my flight that was originally scheduled, at that time I honestly had no idea when I was going to need to take my flight, but eventually I was going to need to take it. The situation was obviously very out of my control, and the lovely customer service agent from Idaho, Devin was his name actually, which I recall, thank you Devin in Idaho, he took the time to actually Google the launch and to confirm that the SpaceX NASA Demo 1 Crew Dragon mission was delayed, in fact, because of the partial government shutdown. Recognize that I, as a consumer and as a traveler, had really nothing to do with that, and he reduced my flight change fee and actually credited my entire ticket to my account, which was a really fantastic customer service experience. It's already encouraged me to fly Alaska more. And in fact, for this flight, as well as another I have coming up next month, I'm deliberately flying them, even though they are slightly more expensive, honestly, probably right around that 16 to 20% range, because this experience was so great. I'm sure you have examples of this for yourself. So think about ways that you can optimize your experience, go through the flow, have other people go through the flow, and look for moments where you can not only optimize the journey, but also surprise and delight your customers along the way. Okay. So, how you doing? I know it's a little rough that I'm stuck inside this 2D screen, but I want you to know that I really do wish I was there, and I care, and I'm super grateful for your time, and I hope that this is providing some value. I truly value your time. Speaking of, one of the more interesting things I found out while doing research for this presentation is just how valuable valuing the customer's time is. In fact, 65% of adults believe that valuing their time is the best thing a company can do to provide a great online experience. That's according to Forrester. So in reality, we can solve a lot of these customer retention issues that we just talked about by providing really great, quick customer service, to my earlier point. Additionally, we talk a lot about churn in the customer retention zone, and the idea is while customer acquisition is important, you don't want to be dropping customers off a cliff at the same time. That's even more important, as these statistics are showing us. So in addition to being responsive in general, being responsive the first time rather than passing something along is very important. 67% of customer churn could be avoided if businesses resolved the customer's issue the first time they brought it up. That goes to show you how many people don't address it or try and put a little fluff around it. And I know as a marketer, the fluff can be tempting, but the reality is if your customer has an issue, you need to be transparent about when that's going to be resolved and what the actual prognosis is. A few other fun stats for you. 85% of customers churn because of poor service that could have been avoided. To prove my further point, don't provide poor service, provide very quick service, provide service on multiple platforms, and provide service that is really transparent and authentic, because people will respond to that. In fact, 9 in 10 people are more likely to give a brand a second chance if you happen to slip up and have a bad experience, and are 85% more likely to stick with them during a crisis if they have a history of transparency. So while it might feel awkward and might not be the best for your ego, be a straight shooter with your customer, value their time, respond to them quickly even if you don't have the right answer, let them know that they're heard, and you can retain customers for a lot longer than you may be doing today. Here's a little anecdote about valuing the customer's time. I'll admit I'm not Uber's #1 fan. That said, there's not always a plethora of rideshare options. So recently, when headed to the airport in New York City, I decided to take an Uber pool. When I checked my receipt after the fact, I realized I'd been charged over 3 times what I was quoted for the pool price. Initially, I was pretty upset and thought to myself, this is exactly why I don't use Uber. But I have to admit, when I went to file a complaint through their app, the process was super smooth, swift, and frankly, didn't ask me a lot of questions. I thought, okay, well, we'll see what happens. It'll probably take a couple days like it usually does when you contact customer service. But no, literally during my taxi time on the runway at JFK, and honestly, probably half that, I heard back from Uber and they completely trusted me and charged me the fee that I had been quoted based on what I told them, and just completely ignored the fee that the device had recorded. So it was a really awesome moment to flip my impression from very negative and feeling a little taken advantage of to building trust and actually feeling trusted as a consumer. I chose to transition to our community section with a photograph of New York because the city really represents community to me. It's where I started my career in community management, and it's where I built the world's largest community around 3D printing alongside a brilliant team of colleagues. I certainly did not do it by myself by any means, but I had the pleasure of being a part of that team. And I recently got to go back just a few weeks ago, and it was truly heartwarming because not only does the city itself and the people there still feel like home and like family, though I'm certainly not a New Yorker. Admittedly, I'm far more Californian and Kiwi than I could ever be New Yorker, but I love it. But also, so many of those people are a part of my life, and still to this day. And I share this with you not because I'm trying to get sappy and make you listen to my nostalgic stories about the Big Apple, but because the great thing about authentic community and investing time in that is that they pivot with you. And even though I don't live there anymore and I don't work for Shapeways anymore, so many of these people are not only in my life, but really valued members of my community, both personally and professionally. So don't underestimate or try and over-quantify the time you spend investing in your people. They will surprise you. Admittedly, I'm a community builder, so I'm naturally an advocate for building community around products. However, it's not just my passion and my profession, it's also worthwhile for your business from a statistical standpoint. As we discussed earlier, word of mouth is still king when it comes to new business. In fact, word of mouth is responsible for 20 to 55% of all buying decisions, according to McKinsey. Additionally, customers are 77% more likely to buy a product when learning about it from friends and family. So if you're not enabling your existing customer base to evangelize your product, either through a good experience, good product, or even great storytelling, which is something we won't have time to cover today, but is also really important, you need to be thinking about how to optimize that opportunity. A few other interesting things. It's not just about keeping in touch with your community all the time, or being short and succinct in your messaging, or putting out fires when they happen. It's also about building trust other ways. And while 86% of customers say that their loyalty is built through likability, aka you having a great product, which I'm sure all of you already have, or else you wouldn't be sitting there, 83% of them say that that loyalty is built through trust. And that trust and accountability and authenticity is a really big theme and core ingredients into the recipe for having a great and sustaining community that is wonderful and continues to spend and purchase from you for years to come. Something to think about too while we're talking about customer loyalty are loyalty programs. Who here in the audience currently has a loyalty program or is thinking about it? Bob, I'm counting on you to count and let me know when you pull me in on the Q&A. If not, 30% of customers switch providers because there is no reward for loyalty. That's something that's really important to think about. Also, if you are losing customers, you should be asking them why they're departing. 50% of customers naturally churn every 5 years. However, only 1 in 26 of those people complain. The rest just quietly disappear. So it's time to touch base with your community, do a pulse check, see how they're doing, ask them what they want from you, how you could be better. Is it that they want better pricing? Is it that they want swag? Is it that they want the opportunity to talk to founders and ask them anything once a month? You never know what will make your community feel closer to you, in addition to the natural, intuitive, positive customer experience steps you're already going to be taking as a result of this presentation. But I can tell you, from every community I've worked with around the world, they will surprise you with how open and warm and positive they will be. And I think you'll learn a lot if you just start asking the right questions. So if you haven't started taking community building seriously, today is the day to begin. I want to thank you all so much for being a part of my community. The New Zealand high-tech community is one of my most beloved, the New Zealand high-tech marketers now. I consider you family, and will soon give you a great big virtual hug here momentarily. And I look forward to hopefully meeting you all in person at the New Zealand High-Tech Awards, the ceremony coming up in May. And if there's still time, which I believe there is, please encourage candidates to apply for the Young Achievers category, where I'm one of the sneaky judges. My name is Savannah Peterson. I hope that you have very much enjoyed this fact-filled presentation. Don't worry, I will be sending all of these savvy statistics to Bob to distribute to all of you. Don't hesitate to reach out to me anytime. I am Sav is Savvy on Twitter and Instagram. My personal email, yes, I'll give you that, is peaceful Savannah, just like my first name, at gmail.com. You can learn more about other places I speak and things that I do on my Savvy Millennial YouTube channel. Just go ahead and search that. And without further ado, pat yourselves on the back for taking a moment to consider your customer and for learning about how to optimize your customer experience. Hopefully you see the value in retaining them and can really optimize the people who are currently already dedicated to your brand and bring those values into the community you attract moving forward. Thank you so much for your time, and I can't wait to see you soon. Mwah!